All right, and welcome back again to the Paisan Sports podcast presented by Elevation 5280 Sports. Dante De Placido, joined as always by Zach Deal of What's the Deal Sports. So I've got to ask, what's the deal with LiAngelo Ball and this banger that he's put out into the internet? It's everywhere. People can't stop listening to it. It sounds like a throwback from 2005. What is going on?
First of all, do you actually think the song is good? I'm not
I
hating on
like
this.
it.
I'm asking you,
I
are you
mainly
more so
like.
following like the pop culture trend? Because it seemed like it really started off about it being a joke and how it was like clown. It wasn't like not like anybody was ever like joking about it and like really like making fun of it, but more so like, oh, this song would be fire if it was back in 2005. And then people are like, nah, wait, this song is just fire in general. That's kind of seems like the vibes that have happened with this song. But it's
What
going
I
from like different locker rooms in the NFL, in the NBA. Obviously, his brothers play in the NBA, and people are putting out edits of like NFL Street intro packages and like NBA Live
Yeah,
'05 highlights. So it's definitely been funny. And he actually got asked to perform at Rolling Loud from all of this. So that's
that's
pretty.
interesting. Yeah, no, the way what I've been noticing is like the people clowning the song or it's like the younger crowd clowning it, like the younger Gen Z kids, like like 19, 20 years old, whatever. But like people who grew up listening to rap in the early to mid 2000s, I feel, such as myself, I feel like we genuinely enjoy the song. Now, I mainly just like the chorus because that is what resembles 2000s hip hop, but when you listen
Yeah,
to
that's
the.
also not to cut you off, but that's also what was funny is when I heard like the snippet, you kept hearing the 15 seconds of the same part of the song, which is like the hook. But when you listen to the entire song doesn't sound like that. And I still yet to
Yeah, no,
listen to
the
the
rest of the
entire
song
song.
sounds a lot more modern. Like the verses aren't like rapping like it's the mid 2000s. The verses are like him like singing like it's modern day rap. Um, but the hook, the chorus, whatever you want to call it, that's like a throwback, and that goes hard. You know what I mean? Like I'm scrolling through TikTok, every other video is Tweaker by LiAngelo Ball, and I fuck with it. I like it.
Is it your new ringtone? Like, would if it was available for like the trend of it sounding like back in the day and how back in the day the grind and the struggle. That was also another video that I saw that I had me hysterically laughing was how people used to make the like voicemails where they'd like
Mhm.
have
Yeah,
listen to a
I
song
saw
and then
one
just
of
jump
those
in on
too.
that. Like I heard people doing
Yeah,
that too. That was really
yeah,
funny. But yeah, if
I
it
saw
was
a couple of
available for
people
a
doing
ringtone,
that.
maybe some people would start buying it again.
I saw a video of somebody playing it through Windows Media Player on like Windows XP or whatever. Yeah, I saw a couple of people doing like they're playing it and then they turn it down. It's like, oh, you've reached me, blah blah blah. So yeah, no, I and then a lot of people were taking the video of Drewski when he's like in the giant white t-shirt with the jorts, like dancing, I mean, over that. So yeah, people have copied it onto like 2000s rap music videos, and it fits very well.
I think there was even
I
some
wonder.
rappers. There was some older generation rappers that were asking for the song to be sent to them for them to send some verses. So there'll probably be a bunch of remixes to that, and then hey, a failed basketball career maybe turns into a big rap career for him.
That's what I was literally about to say. Is obviously basketball is not in the cards for LiAngelo Ball at this point in time. Like it's a failed basketball career there,
It's so
but
funny too, like when you see
he
those
might
like
have a
headlining.
future in hip hop. He might have a future in hip hop.
Yeah, it's like when you see like those headlining posts that just like try to get people riled up online and like it's like NBA star quits NBA career to pursue rap and drops a banger and it's like bro like he never played in the NBA. He was in the G League, but he wasn't in the
G
NBA.
League overseas, it never really worked out for him. I mean, Lonzo has had a steady career to this point, and LaMelo's got a bright future in the NBA. But
Lonzo was
it's
hurt for a really long time, but he's been pretty good while he was healthy, and he's still a good player. I mean, he's just like real injury prone.
yeah, but he's been in the league for quite a while now. When you think about like compared to a lot of other NBA careers, I mean, like the average NBA career is definitely shorter than how long Langelo Ball. I mean Lonzo Ball has been in the league
Oh, you
for.
just went through the whole family there. You
Yeah,
almost said
yeah, yeah.
you only named
The only thing I didn't
LeVar.
say was LeVar. I didn't say LeVar though.
All right,
Nevertheless.
but we got some playoff football on our hands. We got the Philadelphia Eagles coming in
Wait,
at
wait,
14.
wait, wait. Before we dive into the playoff football, I know that's the big topic. But the topic I want to talk about before we get into that is the god tier level of quarterback play we saw out of Tanner McKee. I want to talk about that first. I want to talk about that because if I'm being honest, Tanner McKee looked like a legit NFL quarterback out there. And you could say, well, he went up against the Giants, but he had a second string offense to work with, which kind of goes back to my argument about the preseason, how he was facing third strings, but he was working with
Really
third
stupid
stringers.
argument. Really awful argument.
But this is a much more plausible argument where he went up against the Giants, but it was the Giants starters on defense, and he was working with a second string offensive line. The Eagles center who was playing, I had never even heard of him. I don't even remember his name.
Nick
It
Gates.
was Gates. Yeah, he's dealing with second string wide receivers. He threw a touchdown pass to Aeneas Smith. You know how good of a quarterback you have to be to throw a touchdown pass to Aeneas Smith in an NFL game against first string against a
I don't
first
even know
string
what kind of
defense?
slight that is. He hasn't even been able to prove himself yet and hasn't had any
You know,
opportunities. What kind of slight is that?
he got Jahan Dotson to rack up 94 yards in the
I
big
mean, Jahan Dotson
2024.
should be doing that, and Jahan
Yeah,
Dotson was
but
a first
but
pick
Jahan
2 years ago.
Dotson,
Also, you just completely
even
left
when
out
AJ
did you
Brown and
leave out the
Devontae Smith,
you left
even when
out the
AJ
entire
Brown
part
and
about
Devontae Smith were out against the Buccaneers, Jahan Dotson didn't even come close to doing
because
anything
they haven't even
remotely like
schemed him
that.
open until
He
this.
was able to get Johnny Wilson going.
All
I
right, let me
thought
talk for a second because you completely disregarded about how Dallas Goedert was getting the ball. Literally had what seemed like 20
in the
targets in the
first
first 2
quarter,
tries.
but
Yeah, and
Tanner
that's where all
McKee
the
played great all game.
production. That's where most of the production came. That's where the touchdown came, right in the beginning of the game.
The touchdown went to Aeneas Smith,
Listen,
not
I'm not a
Dallas
Tanner
Goedert.
McKee hater, but just if you think that Tanner McKee gives you a better chance than Kenny Pickett, who has a lot of experience in the NFL, but
Yes!
he's not good.
He
God,
definitely does give you a better
stupid.
chance. Are you kidding me?
That's
Kenny
so
Pickett looked
stupid. That is
awful.
so unbelievably
No,
stupid.
it
And
isn't. Just because
there's
Kenny
a
Pickett
reason
has
why the
played in
pecking
the
order.
NFL before, that means he's a better quarterback than Tanner McKee? No, not at
If you
all.
think if you think Kenny
Experience doesn't automatically make you the better quarterback. Being a higher pick doesn't automatically make you the better quarterback. You can clearly tell. It's an eye test, really. When you watch Tanner McKee play football, he is quick. He is decisive. He gets the ball out. He finds the correct open read. He keeps plays alive. He does everything you need a quarterback to do out there. Kenny Pickett doesn't do all of that.
Oh my god, you're making Tanner McKee out to be like he's like putting up like these outrageous numbers, bro. It all
He's
sounds
not,
crazy.
but you can clearly tell when you watch Kenny Pickett and when you watched it. First of all, most people started. Most people started to think we had something in Tanner McKee last preseason. Then this preseason, when we saw both Kenny Pickett and Tanner McKee, the majority of the fan base, if not the high majority of the fan base, was in agreement that Tanner McKee was the better quarterback. Then, after watching both of them in the regular season, in, I would have thought that argument would be put to bed that Tanner McKee is clearly the better quarterback of the two. I'm honestly surprised that you're still advocating for Kenny Pickett over Tanner McKee. I think that's ludicrous.
I wouldn't even lose sleep over. I wouldn't even think twice. I would start Kenny if it came down to like Jalen Hurts was sitting out this game.
That
I
is
don't even think
insane.
I don't even think it would be under consideration for the Eagles to start. And the only consideration would be
would be under consideration.
No, it wouldn't be. It would just automatically be
Wait,
Kenny.
without saying Kenny Pickett has been in the league already. Give me one aspect of Kenny Pickett's game. Give me one thing you see out of Kenny Pickett that can justify.
I don't think Kenny Pickett is that good of a quarterback. I think he's played in a lot more high stakes games. He's done it in college. He did it in the pros. He's played in multiple playoff games. He has a lot of experience. I don't think Kenny Pickett is.
I just said besides the experience factor, that does not make you the better quarterback.
All right, we can end this conversation because I don't even want to talk about the backup quarterback situation when we have other things to talk about. But you're just like talking like Tanner McKee's like going to turn into like this like top quarterback in the NFL type thing.
I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying he's better than Kenny Pickett.
Also, when I first started talking, I said, who gives you a better chance to win in a situation where Jalen Hurts wasn't able to play in a playoff game? You think Tanner McKee, with the experience that he has in the NFL,
the experience, it's an eye test. Look at who the better quarterback is.
That's so stupid. If you don't
experience,
so resumes don't matter. Resumes don't matter. That's crazy.
He hasn't done anything. Kenny Pickett, it's not like he's played great in big games. You're just saying he's played in playoff games. You didn't say he played great in those games. You just said he played in them. A participation
I don't think anybody. I don't think
the edge over somebody who's come out and played well.
I mean, I think you just anoint like Tanner McKee like off these preseason and back end like regular season.
I'm mainly talking about what we literally just saw from him. And also what we saw from him the previous week when he came in.
One start in week 18, and you're ready to.
So whoever has more starts under their belt is the better quarterback. That's nonsense. That's nonsense.
The guy that literally has played in one NFL game in his career, and you would be willing to put him out there in a playoff game versus a team that almost made it to the NFC Championship last year. That's just nonsense to me. That makes zero sense to me.
But you're just looking at who has spent more. Like,
bro, you're just looking at
who looks better.
You're looking.
Do you honestly trust Kenny Pickett to go out there and win you a game if you need him to in the playoffs? Based off what you've seen from him in his career, if anything, the fact that he has more experience you've seen him play long enough to know that he's not a good quarterback. So if anything, more experience is what you need to decide that he is not the guy.
I've seen an hour of football from Tanner McKee versus like questionable level of talent that he's playing against or playing with, and I can make the assumption that he would give me the best chance over a guy that's played in the league that was a former first-round pick.
And we've seen him play poorly the whole time. Like, he has proven himself as a bad quarterback.
To be a starting quarterback and to get your team to the playoffs, I'm not saying Kenny Pickett's this world beater. There's a reason why he got traded. I don't think he's a starting level consistent quarterback in the NFL, but I just think it's crazy. But let's move on and talk about stuff that actually makes sense, because we're just going to go back and forth of saying the same exact thing like we just did for 10 minutes about the backup quarterback, which is just crazy. But the Eagles, they also have some other injuries going on right now. It looks like Jalen Hurts practiced, so he could be cleared. He's been in concussion protocol for a long period of time, but he practiced. Looked like he was a full participant the other day, and then they got to check his status after he practiced to see and clear him out of concussion protocol. One thing that's been alarming, though, is A.J. Brown's knee kind of looks like it's flaring up a little bit. They gave him rest through his practice status too throughout the week with the knee. It was rest and knee was what they were listing it. But I think when reporters were available today that he wasn't out there for practice. And we know how last year went in the playoffs and some of the games this year when he wasn't available to play for the Eagles. So real quickly, do you think if A.J. Brown were for some reason to miss this game, do you think the Eagles still have a chance at winning this game, or does it give you more so of a feeling like the Tampa game from last year?
No, I wouldn't say it gives me the feeling like the Tampa game from last year. I look at this matchup against the Packers and I look at how they performed against them week 1. I look at how the defense performed, right? The defense wasn't great, but it was good enough to get the job done. But that was Eagles defense BC before Cooper, right? That was when teams would just
That
pick
was
on
slick. That was
Avante.
clever right there.
Yeah.
Did you make that up,
So
or did you see that
no,
somewhere?
I honestly did just come up with that on the
Did
spot,
you just
actually.
rehearse that? That was clean.
I didn't even rehearse it. I just thought at first I was just gonna say BC and then be like by BC I mean before Cooper DeJean, but then Cooper boom, it was right there. Anyhow, that was before Cooper DeJean, right? That was when teams would just pick on Avante Maddox all game and it would get them downfield and into the end zone, right? You saw how the defense performed in the first 4 weeks without Cooper, and how the defense has performed since. It is night and day. So the fact that the defense was still able to play well enough against the Packers, and when I say well enough, let's also not forget when the game was on the line in that final drive against the Packers, they were able to get it done. They were able to get a few stops and end things with a sack on Jordan Love. So I feel very confident in our defense going into this matchup. So I think the offense with Devontae Smith, without AJ Brown, with Dallas Goedert, with Saquon Barkley, with Jalen Hurts, with the offensive line, I think the offense can still do enough without AJ Brown um, to get the win with the defense playing very well. This is all on the assumption the defense does well against Green Bay. I think we can I think we still have enough talent on offense to get the win.
Yeah, I think they're good enough. And also, when saying this is just hypothetical, like there is a good chance that he does play in the game. But I'm just asking if he were not to play in the game because we've already been in this scenario and saw how it went down. But getting Dallas Goedert back from injury, you saw he was getting in rhythm versus the Giants. He was like the only starter that was out there. Everybody else got adequate rest, so they should be rested up. I think it more so benefits the defense, honestly, even though the Eagles have done a really good job of keeping the time of possession in their hands. I think they ended the year with the number one time of possession in the entire NFL, and they run the ball and chew clock, and they've had a couple really long drives in numerous different games that have really just iced the game out and just able to really control the entire game. So, but I don't know how much stock I can put into the first game of the season, not only because it was the first game of the season, but it just seems like this Eagles team and their identity is entirely different from how they played in week 1 and what they did to win in week 1. Jalen, it seemed like he was a lot more reckless with the football, and everybody thought he was going to go on to a double-digit interception year and turnover year. He had 2 interceptions in that game, and I believe a fumble, and he was throwing the ball into double coverage. He was really aggressive throwing the ball, but they also created some big plays in the air because of it. They were able to run the ball. Saquon had a good game in his first game as an Eagle. But their defense wasn't what was carrying this team. That's been the identity for what sparked the winning streak and what really turned this team around. They had 2 sacks that week, and I think they were both by Zach Bond, who had a phenomenal game in his first
Yeah, I
game
think
as an
so.
Eagle.
Yeah.
And they weren't really getting after the quarterback, and they've been getting after the quarterback a lot more consistently, even with some injuries to guys. So, but being mainly healthy, I think they match up well versus the Packers. The Packers are kind of floundering going into the playoffs. They haven't had a lot of success versus really good teams this year. It's more so they've been beating the teams that they should beat, and they're on a 3 out of 4 game losing streak and a 2 game losing streak heading into the playoffs. And a lot of people around them are kind of not in the best frame of mind too. And not only talking about the hypothetical of AJ Brown not playing possibly, they're going to be without Jair Alexander, who's one of their best defenders, if not their best defender, and one of the best cornerbacks in the league that has shut some guys down, some big names down. So I think that makes and we just got news, breaking news.
Oh, what's that?
Jalen Hurts was upgraded to a full participant, an indication he's on track to play.
Yeah, well, that's not like breaking news. It's kind of what we expected, but that is good to hear. That's
All
definitely
right,
good
let's
to
look
hear.
at the injury report one more time, and then we can hit on another topic. I kind of want to talk about just the season in total, in general, real quickly before we actually dive into the preview versus the Packers, because we haven't really been able to reflect on this season. All right, so AJ Brown did not practice. AJ Brown knee and rest, but
I think
uh,
AJ Brown's going to be fine. I don't even know
I think
where
they're
the
gonna be extra
game
cautious with them. They don't
came
wanna, like,
from.
overdo it. They probably won't even try to I mean, anything in the playoff goes, and I don't think they're gonna scheme away from AJ Brown, but I think they could win this playoff game with him playing and him not playing the biggest role in the game, even though you know how much he likes to be involved and how much he likes to be out there, as we further knew this season. But, just talking about the entire Eagles season in general, Dante, what do you think, was the biggest surprise?
Um, I think Zach Baun. I mean, it feels like such an obvious answer, but definitely I would say Zach Baun. I mean, this is a guy who was just a special teams player over in New Orleans. We bring him along. If you go back and watch one of the old podcasts, you'll even find a clip of me complaining that the starters we were presumably going to see in the regular season were Devin White and Zach Baun instead of Devin White and Nakobe Dean. And I was like, what the hell's up with this Zach Baun guy? Why do we love
Yeah.
him so much? Um, but he's gone from that to being arguably the best linebacker in football this year. And I think he has been the best linebacker in football this year. He's put up bigger numbers than Luke Kuechly's defensive player of the year season. Um, and I think he's the highest graded linebacker in football to boot. So I would say definitely easily Zach Baun has been the biggest surprise. And also on that topic, the NBA and the NFL have two very similar awards, but they're a little different. NFL has comeback player of the award, comeback player of the year award, and NBA has most improved player of the year award. I For Zach Baun, I don't think he qualifies as comeback player of the year award because he was never great to begin with. But if this was most improved player of the year, I would say Zach Baun would easily be the favorite candidate. And I would also say, on just not to go off topic very briefly, but I would say on the flip side of things, if the NBA had comeback player of the year award instead, I would say it should be Yabusele, considering he hadn't played in the NBA in like 6 years and now is having one heck of a season so far. Not to get off topic a bit, but yeah.
What about like a team thing? Not because that's more so what I was like hinting at, like an area
Oh,
that you like surprised you with the team. I'm not saying that was a bad answer or anything, but like when I was asking that question and formulating it in my mind, I was more so thinking about like how the Eagles excelled in this area that you didn't think they were going to be good at, or they were getting contributions from this position group that you didn't get think was going to happen, or this thing happened to them, like the retirements of the legends, and you didn't expect for those guys to their replacements to come in and be
well,
2 Pro
I'm not
Bowlers.
surprised by I'm not surprised by the replacements at all. Kelsey handpicked Jurgens. I expected this from Jurgens.
But I mean,
Jalen.
Cam Jurgens being named as a Pro Bowl selection, I think Jordan Mailata definitely got snubbed. But I also see why they're not going to name the entire Eagles offensive line to the Pro Bowl. I think in
Yeah, but
2022,
my Lotta deserved it the most, in my
I
opinion.
know, but I think they were just going to give it to 3 in general, so they ended up picking that. I think Mailata did deserve it the most. I was kind of surprised by Cam Jurgens making it in there, but it has shown how good Cam Jurgens has been and how
It's
seamless of a
it's
transition it's been.
honestly it's honestly a damn shame that at this point in my Lotta's career, he's never made the Pro Bowl.
Yeah,
And I hope he doesn't make it as an as a Pro Bowl alternate
reserve.
this year.
Yeah, because then
Yeah,
that
I'm
means
I'm
they wouldn't be making
praying
the
I'm
Super Bowl.
praying that doesn't happen as much as I really want to see him
He even
get
said
a
it
Pro
himself, he
Bowl.
doesn't wanna make it by default like that because of that, so
Yeah, yeah, no, that if I want this team to go to the Super Bowl, but yeah, I mean, I expected Cam Jurgens to be a great center. Obviously, we expected this out of Jalen Carter. I would say the biggest I would say the biggest surprise is the linebacker group and secondary. Definitely the secondary, because we're not used to the Eagles having this good of a secondary. There have been years where they've had a great defense and the secondary, made their contribution, but to be the strength of the defense is something we haven't really seen since the Jim Johnson days. In the early to mid 2000s, but that
And it
defense
almost
was
seems like it just feels so
Brandon Dawkins,
refreshing.
Lito Shepard, Sheldon Brown. Um,
And it's
sorry.
also, like, really refreshing, because it's been so long since they actually put the resources in, like, the draft, you know what I mean, to go out and get guys
Yeah.
that actually have turned into a success. So, for me, that's probably what it's been. I think I would agree with that. We're gonna talk about, like, probably the biggest surprise. Everybody thought the defense, was gonna be, like, mid-level, middle of the pack, and was talking about the conversation on, like, sports
Mhm.
radio in Philadelphia was, could the Eagles have, like, a middle of the pack defense with a top-ranked offense and go throughout the playoffs that way and have success. So, winning 14 games this year in their defense. Obviously, their offense was really good. They ran for 3,000 yards. Were one of the 7 teams in NFL history to run for 3,000 yards in a season. So, Saquon Barkley, 2,000-yard rusher. Devontae Smith just came up short of 1,000-yard season and obviously didn't play in that last game and missed a couple other games as well. AJ Brown, 1,000-yard receiver. Dallas Goedert missed a bunch of time, was productive and had the
AJ
110
Brown also missed a lot of time for the amount of games AJ
Yeah,
Brown
Devontae and
played.
AJ
A
missed
thousand
the
yards is
exact
a hell of a feat,
I
honestly.
think Devontae and AJ missed like the exact same amount of games, or if it was like one off or the other. So Jalen Hurts missed a game or two himself. So their offense wasn't like bad, you know what I mean? And people are kind of a little bit dramatic with the passing game and the way that they talk about the passing game. But the biggest surprise for me was probably the production that they got out of the linebacker group and who it was, because I was really big on Devin White. But even more so, I would probably go with that secondary and how they turned two of their top draft picks in to two of the biggest cornerstone pieces to a defense that looks like it's going to be really good and one of the youngest defenses in the league, and it's going to be good for years to come. They have one starter right now that's over the age of 30.
Yeah, and it's a 34-year-old corner who is still playing at, in my opinion, an elite level. The D line is very young, the linebacker group is young, and the depth of this linebacker group to me is really good. I thought Oren Burks played very well against the Giants on Sunday. I think he racked up like 17 tackles or something like that. He's looked good when he's need to step in. He has a great if you look at his grades on Pro Football Focus, it's looking good. Same thing with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. We haven't seen a ton from him. He's looked a little bit shaky when we've seen him, but I think there's a lot of good from what we've seen from Trotter Jr. And he's just a rookie, So I think this linebacker group, it's from all four guys, it's one hell of a group. They're young. The oldest one is Zach Bond, who's like 26 or 27. I could be wrong on that because he has been in the league for a few years. But
Zach Bond's 27. Are you talking about the overall age of the defense?
Right now I was just talking about the linebacker.
CJ and Zach Bond are like both 27. We got Josh Sweat, who's 27. Milton Williams, like 25, 26. And everybody else is pretty much under the age of 25.
Yeah, everyone else has been drafted no later than like 2022, I want to say. Yeah, because that's when we drafted 2022 is when we drafted Jordan Davis. And I think all the other big I don't think any of the other big pieces on defense were drafted even before then, outside of the guys you just mentioned. So yeah, it's a young, very talented defense. And to get this level of play out of two rookie corners is honestly something else.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I didn't expect I thought they were gonna be good. I was higher on Cooper DeJean. That's who I wanted in the first round. We talked about this numerous times, and they were able to get him in the second round. It took a while, and I was kinda getting mad at it was funny because I was getting a little irritated with Vic Fangio in the beginning because I thought Devin White could be a big piece of this defense. I didn't know if Zach Bond I mean, I don't think anybody could have forecasted Zach Bond was gonna blossom into the player that he's turned into this year. And Vic Fangio saw something alluded and put him out there. Devin White never got his opportunity. It seemed like Devin White was going to be the guy. So from right there, when Devin White wasn't playing and Cooper DeJean got hurt and then wasn't initially put into the lineup, I'm kind of thinking like, does Vic Fangio even know what he's doing out here? Like, why is he treating and not playing players and just treating the lineup this way? And it ended up since they put Cooper DeJean in after the bye week and it sparked the team. He's been phenomenal. I think it was like 79 pass attempts on him this year and didn't allow one touchdown, which is pretty crazy. So he's doing his thing. I still can't believe that we went through a season though with the way that this defense has played and has been top of the league. It's been different from other teams. Like the Packers defense isn't really consistently that good from drive to drive, but they create a lot of turnovers. The Eagles are kind of different where they're good consistently drive to drive and can really smother you, but they really don't create that many turnovers. I mean, we just went throughout a season where we didn't get a single interception from a cornerback, which is so crazy to me. Doesn't make any
Yeah,
sense.
although the Eagles have had some games sporadically this year where they have forced a lot of turnovers. One of which being the game against the Cowboys. They forced a lot of turnovers in that
The
game. And
Washington game, obviously.
yeah, the Washington game, that was back-to-back games. I just didn't want to bring that game up again. But there was a couple other games as well. I mean, they'll go 3 games without forcing a single turnover, and then they'll get 5 in the next game after that. So they're very inconsistent when it comes to
They also get
forcing turnovers.
timely turnovers too, whether it's like they need a turnover in the red zone or they get a turnover at the end of the
Yeah.
game when a team's driving, they get turnovers in that sense. So that's definitely a plus, but they could definitely create more turnovers. And I mean, how many times have we sacked a quarterback this year? Not too often, it seems like.
Yeah, yeah. No, I feel like a good chunk of our turnovers have been forced fumbles on running backs. I feel like that's been the bread and butter of this defense. I think Zach Bond himself has like 5 or 6 forced fumbles on the season. I think maybe 5. So that's kind of been the way this team has been forcing a lot of turnovers. Their safeties combined for 10 on the season, although they don't have any interceptions from corners. To get 10 from your safety duo is something else. So yeah, I mean, I like
And
this
the
defense.
Packers safety has what, 10 by himself, it seems like. Xavier McKinney ended the season with like what, 8 or 9?
Did he really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, he had a lot.
Wow. Um, but yeah, and like you mentioned, this team has a different identity than week 1, and I think that's, in a good way. The defense has been.
Well, if you would have asked me that CJ Gardner Johnson, I believe in him
Yeah,
and he
8
was coming back.
interceptions for McKinney. Sorry, what were you
Yeah,
saying?
but with CJ Gardner Johnson, I thought week 1 he played horrible versus the Packers and missed a bunch of open
Oh,
field
yeah,
tackles,
he
hurt
looked
in
bad in
coverage.
that game. Yeah.
And that was kinda a trend throughout the entire beginning of the season for him, until the bye week, until they inserted some help in the slot. It seemed like when they inserted Cooper DeJean that their back end started getting stronger with coverage as well because it seemed like, he was even getting burnt in the Bucks game too when they were getting, handled a little bit. He was, getting tossed around in coverage. So,
And
he's turned it around.
look how bad the defense looked after he got ejected against Washington.
I know, it was like night and
He's a
day.
huge difference. Yeah, he's a huge difference maker on this defense. Um,
Comes up
so
and
yeah,
lays the wood on line or on running backs in the hole. Did it versus Bijan Robinson. Remember the Super Bowl hit when he was his first year here versus was that Isaiah Pacheco in space where Isaiah
I have
Pacheco
never I've never rewatched any of the highlights of that Super Bowl. I can't bring myself to do it. So I do
yeah, it's
not
tough. You know, it's actually
know
crazy.
what
Right
you're
next
talking
to
about.
us, I have this hat Looks like a nice Eagles hat, right? With,
I see the Super Bowl patch. I can see it. Yeah.
so what do I ever even do with that hat? I mean, it would be cool if
You
they won
burn
the
it.
Super Bowl. I
You
could
burn
rock
it.
it.
You burn it is what you do. You
Like
freaking burn it.
$30 down the drain right there.
Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. I mean, in high school, I spent $100 on a midnight green DeMarco Murray jersey after we signed him. That jersey never saw the light of day again after that season. So, you win some, you lose some. And that was before jersey protection. Now you buy a jersey of a player, you have like 1 year where if they leave the team after one season, then you
Have you
can
ever
get
even
rid of
cashed in on that?
it.
Because like that's been a thing, but I've never even tried to
Well,
cash in. I
ever
also
since
strategically buy my jerseys.
DeMarco Murray, I've never bought a jersey of a player unless it was a retired legend like Brian Dawkins, or somebody I had full confidence in, like Jalen Hurts. Um, so I didn't even buy a Wentz jersey during the Wentz hype. I was too worried to get a Wentz jersey.
I had a Wentz
Um,
jersey. I had a Jeffrey jersey too. I strategically buy my jerseys though. Like right now, I have a Jalen Carter. Obviously, that's good for a while. I have a Devontae Smith, good for a while. I have a Saquon, which is even off this season alone, if he never does anything again in his career for the Eagles, is already a legendary jersey with the 2,000-yard season. So we didn't touch on that either because we did the podcast early last week. This week we were trying to get a guest on, but weren't able to make it happen. That's why we're doing it later in the week. But what were your thoughts on the Eagles sitting all the starters and not chasing the record with Saquon Barkley needing 101 yards to go? With the hindsight
I
now, but more
mean,
so the initial reaction that you had.
well, the initial reaction was I was bummed because I actually really wanted to see him get the record. And then as I was reminded, because I'd forgotten all about it, um, Eagles played a meaningless game in the final game last season. Jalen Hurts hurt his finger. AJ Brown got hurt and missed the game against the Buccaneers. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, makes sense. Even if there's a small chance of Saquon getting hurt in that game, why even take that chance? Let's go win another Super Bowl. I've been dying for another Super Bowl. So let's go out and win it. Let's give Saquon the rest he probably needs because he hasn't had a week off since week 5, like I've mentioned a lot on this podcast. And then not only that, not only do you avoid injury, not only do you give yourself some rest, but you go into this game with a bit of an advantage because you're coming off a bye week, essentially. If I'm not mistaken, the Packers, their starters played last week, right?
Yeah, that's when Jordan Love got hurt in the game,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
elbow
So,
injury.
I mean, it's essentially like your team is coming off a bye week, and the other team not only had to play last week, but they're also traveling to come play you. So I think that gives the Eagles a big advantage. And when you have 4 playoff games to win instead of 3 because you didn't win the bye week, I mean, every game is if you can get a good jump start by being the much fresher team in the first week of the playoffs. I mean, I think that's huge. So yeah, I
Do
mean,
you
I
would you have felt that way too if their bye wasn't that early in the season, or do you think that has a lot to do
no,
with
I
what you
think
just
that
said?
I think
That's
that is a big, as I've been mentioning on this podcast, I think that plays a big part in it. If they had the week 14 bye week that some of the other teams had, then I would say just go out and get the record. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But you hadn't had off in 13 weeks. I mean they've got to be gassed. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was initially very disappointed. I'm a huge running back advocate. I love running backs. That's my favorite position in football. So I'm always advocating for the position to progress. And I'm really happy that the value of running backs is coming back. Not only that, Saquon's just a stand up dude. And I think a lot, I mean, he could have easily had this record if he didn't check himself out of numerous games this year. And I also thought that could have been used in an argument to why you could have advocating for. Everybody says, "Oh, well, they hadn't had a bye since week 5," but there was a couple games in there where they weren't playing the starters in the second half. It wasn't a lot of games, but it was a decent amount of games to the point where it was like 3 or 4 games where they had things wrapped up already down the stretch. So I think they could have still done it and not seen that, but It is what it is now that it's over. I guess that I'm happy that, there's no possible chance that he can break the record now. So I guess I'm happy with the hindsight that they have the rest going into the playoffs, and their quarterback needed it. I don't know. Last week, I'm kind of a little bit nervous about Jalen Hurts only playing like 12 snaps in almost like a month's period of time going into the playoffs too. That's something that kind of worries me. I don't know if um, he wasn't ready to go and they're like slow playing getting him out of concussion protocol, or this is just how long it actually takes, which is kind of alarming in a way that it takes this long for him to progress through. But if he was good to go last week, I would actually like to see Jalen Hurts for a drive or two just to get him back acclimated and to get the blood flowing a little bit, instead of just going into the playoffs with only playing 12 snaps from that Washington game until that playoff game. So
Yeah, I agree with you with Jalen Hurts. But from what it seems like to me, it seemed like he, well, fact of the matter is he hadn't cleared concussion protocol yet. I don't know if he, if he could have, like maybe
that's
they
what I'm
didn't go
saying.
to the
I don't know if
bother
they're slow
clearing
playing it
him.
more so.
But yeah, I mean, if he couldn't play, he couldn't play. But I think if he would have been able to play, I think they definitely should have put him in there for a drive or two, going in cold into the playoffs. That does worry me a bit. So, but also, I mean, hey, look back at 2017, right? Nick Foles looked absolutely, I wouldn't say awful, but he didn't play all that well against the Falcons. The offense didn't do a whole lot. They end up winning that game, and then Nick Foles turns into a god in the following two games. So maybe even if he does get off to a slow start against the Packers, but they're able to win it, maybe he can really pick up rhythm from there throughout the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm just more so about him being a little bit rusty. His fingers banged up too, so I hope that
Well, his
he's aware and
non-throwing
alert
hand. I'm
out there.
not
I
as
hope that
worried about the
the ball
fingers.
is secure. He's not getting stripped out there in the pocket. Um, the Packers create good internal rush and external rush from the outsides from their defense, and they obviously create a lot of turnovers. If he throws into tight, congested windows, their safeties will jump it and they'll make plays on the ball. So, but I'm not too worried about this matchup with the Packers. Who is a team in the NFC that you are worried about for the Eagles
Bucks,
that they could face down the line?
Bucks,
You
Buccaneers,
that's the number
Buccaneers,
one team that you're nervous about?
Buccaneers, man, Buccaneers. They
I know
scare me.
The Bucks are
They
definitely like a
scare me.
kryptonite. I mean, they did beat them, which people never mention. They did beat them in the regular season last year, but that was before everything went awry. That was the game that DeAndre Swift had like 180 yards rushing, and they exposed their defense. I think it was like 25-10 on Monday Night Football, and then yeah, everything changed from that point on. But uh, the Bucks are a scary team. They're an offense where it seems like Baker Mayfield really just carves the defense every single time, and it just seems like the Eagles defense forgets how to tackle when they play against the Bucks too. But we were missing a bunch of starters when we played that game earlier this year. I'm pretty sure was that the game we were missing. It was AJ, Devontae, and Lane Johnson for that game.
Yeah, yeah, pretty improbable. But the defense
And
also got carved up in that game. However, it was BC before Cooper. But
I think Saquon also
anytime
had
we've
like
faced
10
the
carries in
Bucks
that
and
game
we've
too.
done bad, it's due to insinuating circumstances. Where last year in the playoffs it was without AJ Brown. This year in the regular season was without AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Lane Johnson. The defense was BC. Um, so, I mean, like you can justify why the Eagles have played poorly in those games. You can even look at the playoff game against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers and say, that wasn't really a legit playoff team. That was a team that kind of was able to sneak their way into the playoffs by just running a ton and catching teams by surprise, being, the underdogs. Because that had played horrible in the year leading up to them getting hot. They were outmatched going into that game, but yeah, even due to all of that, it's just like we've gotten our ass kicked by the Bucks so many times recently that just the idea of playing them worries me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a fair statement for sure. I think this defense is a lot improved, and I wouldn't be as nervous about it. I'm kind of scared about this defense matching up versus a team, obviously, like the Lions, that have like really high level skill position players all over the place. Also, the Lions just got
Lions do
back
seem
David.
scary.
The Lions just got back David Montgomery too, so
Yeah.
that's going to make a doubleheaded and Jameer Gibbs. I think that's something that we learned about in the NFL too, is like these skill position players are coming right into the NFL and impacting the game. And running backs, I mean, Jameer Gibbs ended up leading the league in touchdowns this year. Bijan Robinson was like third in the league in rushing yards. Saquon obviously moved to the Eagles this offseason, leads the league in rushing yards. Derrick Henry moves to the Ravens, and he's the first player ever to rush for 19,000 plus yards and not win the rushing title. So you just see the
1900.
impact. Did I say 19,000?
You did say
You
19,000.
ever see his high school stats?
Yeah, they were
He
absurd.
rushed for like 12,000 yards or something like that.
It
Something
was, yeah,
absolutely
it was
outrageous. But
rushing for like 400 yards a game. But yeah, yeah, no, the Lions are definitely a bit scary.
I'm not really scared about the Lions defense and being able to get into a
That's
shootout with
why
them.
the
I'm kind of more
Lions
so,
don't
it seems like
worry
the
me as
Lions.
much as the Buccaneers, is because their defense does not scare me. Their offense does a bit, but their defense does not.
The thing about the Lions that's scary is like the Eagles go for it and they're really aggressive all the time. And Dan Campbell's the same way as the Eagles, but the Eagles do like the tush push and get 1 yard to progress the drive and keep it like the slow play. And that's why the time of possession is like the Lions will straight up go for it on their own 30-yard line, 4th and 4, and throw a 70-yard
That's
touchdown
fine.
pass.
But that's fine. I mean, this
Yeah, but
Eagles
they
defense
have
has
such a
done
there's
this
like
Eagles
there's so
defense
much
has done
pressure on them.
very well. This Eagles defense has done very well all season on stopping teams on fourth down. So I'm not
They
really
killed them
worried.
in the Washington
I'm
game, though.
worried about like just how good the Lions offense is. I'm not really worried about them trying to go for it here and there. I like the way our defense is able to stop teams from doing that. But anyway, it's time for my meatball of the week. Now, my meatball of the week, there was a lot of meatballs this week. There was a lot of a lot of meatballs following the events of week 18. And I could have gone a few ways. I could have gone to the Giants owner for announcing he's keeping the head coach and GM. But we've already picked on him plenty of times this year. I could have went after Jerry Jones for stating that he has no plans of relinquishing his GM status, even though um, it, Jerry Jones made one great move when he first bought the team that led to those 3 Super Bowls. He traded Herschel Walker for a huge haul, which really led to their success. And that was the only good move he's ever really made. So to not relinquish controls as GM, thinking you're capable of doing it, is just insane to me. So I could go after Jerry Jones as the meatball of the week, but we've already picked on him as well. The meatball of the week I'm choosing is a guy whose name also starts with a J. Everybody I've named already, their name starts with a J. Gerard Mayo. He got fired like an hour after the game ended, after one season of being head coach. And not only that, it was with a roster that was not improved from the previous season. And he won the same amount of games from the previous season. So what more do you expect him to do? Not much. And not only did they fire him, they didn't wait till the next day. They waited till like an hour after the game ended, and they tossed him. So
Wait,
Jared, whatever Mayo, Hellman's Mayo, you're my meatball of the week.
let me get this straight. Is he the meatball of the week, or you're like trying to name Robert Kraft and you kept saying Gerard Mayo?
No, I'm making him the meatball of the
'Cause
week.
you made him the meatball of the week, but you were also like advocating for, you were like making not
Yeah,
an
but
excuse
no,
for him, but you were kind of advocating for him.
He's the meatball of the week. It's kind of like, the movie Friday. Like, how did you get fired on your day off? Not that he got fired on his day off. He got fired an hour after the game ended. But it's kind of like, I don't know. He's the
Well, we were
meatball.
talking about this before. We were talking about like how the fan base and all the players, like we've even seen some players address this in the media where it's like, oh, I hear the fans saying that they don't want us to win, but I'll never go out there and not compete to win. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, as a head coach, if you're having that bad of a season, it looks like the direction isn't changing around at all. I mean, they had Bill Belichick for that many years as a consistent, steady coach that had them at a championship level. And then to have the season that they had, you're right for saying, like, what do you expect out of him? He has a rookie quarterback. He has no receiving group. Gerard Mayo was benching their starting running back, Ramondre Stevenson, for fumbling issues throughout the year. Antonio Gibson was on Washington before. He's a decent player, but he's not a starting level running back the way that Stevenson was productive. He's a defensive-minded coach, was a former linebacker for the Patriots, and their defense was all right. Their corner from Oregon, Christian Gonzalez, second-year corner, has really come on to be a really good player for them, and they got some pieces on that side of the ball. But they're really not working with much. And
No,
but if you win a game that takes you away from having the first overall pick, it's pretty hard. You know what I mean? When your
you
resume.
shouldn't. You shouldn't. But you shouldn't punish a head coach for winning a game. It's his job to win the
Well, I
game.
think
What
they
you
also.
can't
I
expect
think they
that. You can't
realized that
expect
they
the
made a mistake.
coach to tank.
I think they realized that they made a mistake and they want to be able to get in. A lot of teams also, you got to take into account when you're hiring a head coach in the NFL is that teams might hire that guy because they're the right guy in that time and place. I mean, you have to have a coach unless you have a coach that took over in the interim like Antonio Pierce, and then he ends up becoming your coach again. Then you saw what happened to him. He ended up getting fired too. But you have to hire a coach. So that coach that they hire might be good in that hiring cycle. But say this hiring cycle comes back around and Pete Carroll wants to go coach again, who just interviewed as a head coach. Bill Belichick's obviously off the board and the Patriots fired him, so they wouldn't be getting back with him. But now maybe Mike Vrabel has interest in coming back to the Patriots and being their coach. You know what I mean? It all depends on what that initial hiring cycle has to offer.
Yeah, I don't know. Give the guy more than 1 year to
But I think this also kind of shows that the Patriots, like how everybody kind of just made fun of Bill Belichick for running like a strict, tight type of scheme there. It's not just him. You know what I mean? It's not just him with the structure. And maybe just all the Patriots operate in that sense. You know what I mean? The hierarchy of the Patriots just operate in that type of way that, like, you know, they have a short leash and they have a standard. And if it's not being met, then that's what they're going to do. And maybe now they see that they hire Gerard Mayo, then they get Drake May. They're like, oh, we got a defensive coach that is not going to really help our quarterback progress at all, our young quarterback that has shown flashes in his rookie year. Let's go out and get an offensive-minded coach, even though that kind of goes against what I just said about Mike Vrabel, but more so the Mike Vrabel tie from him being a Patriot legend and being in their Ring of Honor and everything. But maybe their thing is like, oh, let me go get Cliff Kingsbury and pair him with Drake May. You know what I mean? Maybe that's the thing. But also, Eagles perspective wise, talking about coaching hirings, Kellen Moore has been requested to interview with what I think the Bears and the Saints so far have requested to interview with him. It might have been
I
the
did
Jags.
see some
I
teams
think it was the
requested
Jags.
to
It was the
interview
Saints and the
him.
Jags.
Um, it,
But we haven't seen Vic Fangio.
Jalen Hurts can't catch a fucking break, man.
Yeah,
Throughout his
yep.
entire career as a quarterback, college and pros, he's only had it only once has he had the same offensive coordinator for 2 seasons, and it wasn't even a good one. And that's why it was for 2 seasons. I mean, every single time the Eagles get a good offensive coordinator, they end up leaving because they get a head coaching job offer, or they get fired because they stink. So I mean, it's got to be tough, man, to have to learn a new offense every single goddamn year. But on the bright side of things, Vic Fangio has stated he has no intentions of leaving to
Yeah,
become a
I
head
don't
coach.
think. And the thing is, I think teams would be very aggressive coming after him if he was available, but I think he shut it down. I kind of questions it because like Ben Johnson's going out there. It looks like Ben Johnson's going to leave Detroit after this season. That's almost like a foregone conclusion. I don't think he's going to stay there for another year. And some teams that are in the playoffs, they have their coordinators prepping for the playoffs, and they have to take a little bit of time away to go pitch themselves to other teams and stuff. So, but with the Eagles, do you think Doug Peterson just got fired? Do you think there's any Doug Peterson come back and be the Eagles offensive coordinator? How crazy would that be?
I honestly don't hate that idea. I do want to say, I keep getting Ben Johnson and Brian Johnson confused in my head. And when I first heard about how great Ben Johnson is doing, I thought to myself, well, surely that can't be the same guy that was with the Eagles as their offensive coordinator. It's not. Our guy was Brian Johnson, not Ben Johnson. I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I wouldn't hate the idea of Dougie P being our next offensive coordinator. It'd be cool to get him back in the building. So yeah, I wouldn't hate that idea.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it seems far fetched or not. It kind of actually seems like it could be a pairing, but it would just be a weird dynamic of the coach. But that's what Vance Joseph's doing now. Vance Joseph was the head coach of the Denver Broncos at one point in time, and he's back as the defensive coordinator, working under Sean Payton there. So if you want to coach back in the NFL and you can put your pride to the side and do that, that'd be cool. I'd be all on board with that. That would be awesome. I don't even think Doug Peterson would outweigh, he's a cool guy to the point where it's not like his persona would outweigh Nick Sirianni in a way, even though that would be the talk of all sports radio is how they would pitch it of Nick Sirianni, just, not having that big of an impact on the team. But the one good thing is Nick Sirianni being an offensive minded coach, even though we don't know how much actual input he has, but we know that there's a set type of parameters and schemes and things he likes to do as an offensive coach that has been transitioned for a while between all these different offensive coordinators that the Eagles have had, with Jalen Hurts and him as the head coach and quarterback. So at least there's the familiarity with that. But AFC wise, we've been talking about the NFC. We talked about the Packers and the matchup. Not too much. There's been a lot that's changed since week one. There's not too much we can take away from week one because the teams have changed differently. But if we're looking at the AFC side of the playoffs, who do you think is going to come out of the AFC, and who's a sleeper out of the AFC that you think can really make some noise and could possibly meet up with the Eagles if they make it to the Super Bowl?
As much as I hate to say it, I I think the Chiefs are the team that are going to make it out of the AFC. The Bills have shown time and time again that the Bills and getting past the AFC Championship game to me feels like the Sixers and trying to make it out of the second round. The Ravens, I just don't think they have it this year. Definitely not the Steelers. They have not looked good at all lately. The Chiefs, they've struggled at times throughout the year, but the kind of fuckery that goes on in Kansas City Chiefs games. I think they're going to make it out of the AFC. I think that's who we're going to see in the Super Bowl representing the AFC.
Dynasty?
I don't think if they make it to the Super, I think whoever wins the NFC Championship is going to win the Super Bowl. In my opinion, I think the NFC looks a lot better than the AFC. I think the Lions look better than any team in the AFC. I think the Eagles look better than any team in the AFC. I could even argue maybe the Vikings even look. Granted,
I
Sam
don't know.
Darnold.
That's one thing if we're talking about sleepers. I know we're talking about the AFC. You were talking about the Bills and kind of like that. I wouldn't put the Broncos as a sleeper. I don't think they're going to be too competitive in
Well,
the
I didn't say
game.
the Broncos. I didn't say the
No, no,
Broncos.
I was just throwing somebody out there that would be a big sleeper to me.
Yeah, I think the
But
Broncos.
I think the Rams could upset the Minnesota Vikings, and I don't even know if it would be considered an upset with them being the home team. But I think the Rams, the way that they've gotten healthy, the way that their offense can be
Yeah,
dynamic
I
with
could see that.
how they run the ball with Kyron Williams. And I feel like Minnesota, the thing about Sam Darnold is I was a huge Sam Darnold guy when he first came into the league. He was my favorite quarterback out of that draft class. And I root for him, but he just seems with the one seed on the line in week 18, he just was coming up short. He just wasn't making the right reads.
Yeah,
Was
that's
throwing the
that's
ball
the
for
only
way too
reason.
long. I
If it
just
wasn't for
feel like
that
that
week
can happen
18
again.
game, yeah, if it wasn't for that week 18 game, I would have a lot more confidence in the Vikings. Sam Darnold leading a high caliber Vikings team feels eerily similar to Case Keenum on the Vikings in
Exactly.
2017. So I could definitely see them coming up short in the playoffs. But the one thing that annoys me with the Rams is, like, I saw even in the national media, they were like, "Oh well, now that the Rams are healthy, I mean, the Lions, the Eagles, blah blah blah, they all need to look out for the Rams." After we had already beaten a fully healthy Rams team, so that just pissed me off. It's like, don't group the Eagles into that statement when they have already beaten a fully healthy Rams team quite decisively as well. So I just had to get that off my chest. But anyway, let's move on to our final topic before we get out of here. Not much new in the world of the Philadelphia 76ers. The only thing I would say is, outside of his role on defense, Paul George is Tobias Harris 2.0. Joel Embiid still can't stay healthy. It's very annoying. And Gershon Yabusele is starting to really come around, in my opinion. I'm really starting to like what I see out of him.
Yeah, the thing about Paul George that's alarming is that it's like he's like shooting the ball so inefficiently. It's not even like it's like a lack of athleticism and he can't do like certain things that he used to do in the past. It's just him not being able to put the ball inside of the rim. And I just don't really understand what's going on with it. And there's been even games where it seems like every 2 to 3 games, like Joel will play 2 to 3 games and he'll miss a couple games after that and then come back in those games that Joel misses and they need him to step up. Paul George hasn't even really stepped up yet. Um, at least they got Tyrese Maxey. This would, I think, this team, the way that they've been grooving, we talked about on the previous podcast how difficult January was going to be with all these games and the amount of games that they had to play and the opponents that they had to play. I think we did 12 out of like 17 of the games that they had to play are like playoff worthy teams or teams that look like they're going to make the playoffs with winning records. So, um, they're going to have to figure it out and pull it together. I don't know what type of moves they're going to make with the trade deadline, like a month away, how aggressive they're going to be, if they're going to try and go all in for this year to get pieces for role players. I mean, they have pretty good role players. I don't know what they would really try to add. They're not going to try and trade uh, like Jared McCain or anything. So maybe they can move like Kelly Oubre if they really wanted to get a specific 3-and-D type player back, but I don't even know if that would really help them. So I think, the biggest theme of this team and how they're going to be
Well,
able to
I
get
think
back is just
I think
health.
Kelly Oubre. I think Kelly Oubre is also starting to come back around.
That was just an example. It's just more so I feel like it's not even his
Well,
fault.
yeah, I
He's
know.
not producing as
I
a
just felt
player.
like bringing that up. However, because Kelly Oubre, throughout the beginning of the season, especially with the point production from Jared McCain, he wasn't really doing much. But I feel like he's really been stepping up lately. I do really like the role players on this team. I mean, this is a team littered with good role players, in my opinion. I think, much more than, this. If you look at this team's possible two biggest needs, right? Whether you say, okay, is their biggest need to add a player at the trade deadline, or is their biggest need to just get healthy? I would say their biggest need is to just get healthy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Their biggest theme is I think the only thing that really holds them back from reaching their full potential is health, and we saw it. I mean, it just sucks because like their health just kind of goes up and down. It's just like a couple games they look good, and then a couple games they got some guys missing, and we can't even really judge them. And they get you so hype on Christmas when they beat Boston. And it looks like they're turning the corner, and they've won this many games out of this many games, and they're on a winning streak. And then they go back into their same old ways. And the season's not getting any earlier. I mean, we're in January already. The playoffs are not that far away, if we're being honest. So, if they really want to get their act together, I think they're 2 games out. They're like 15-20 right now. The team that's the 10th place for a play-in spot, 17-20. So you're muted.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're a game out of the 10 seed right now. So I mean, making the playoffs is very doable. They just need to get healthy.
But what kind of expectations do we have if they're making the playoffs because their current roster with
If they can go into the playoffs having been healthy for a while, I would say I expect them to, I mean, at least make it to the second round. I can never, have expectations for them to do any more than that, no matter how good they look in the regular season, no matter how stacked the roster is, because they simply have never proven they're even remotely capable of doing that. But I expect them to look good in the playoffs as long as they enter the playoffs having been healthy for a while.
I agree. So hopefully we'll have a healthy Joel Embiid back soon. Paul George will uptick his progress and his progression. That's also another thing before we get out of here is not only has Joel been banged up, and that's obviously a theme, but they signed Andre Drummond as the insurance to Joel this year, and he's been banged up for numerous games too. And not only banged up himself in games where he could spell Joel and Joel's playing, but he's also been banged up in games where Joel hasn't played himself, and then they have to use Yabusele as a starting center, and they don't have a big man, a true traditional big man. So maybe that's something they target at the trade deadline and they can go out and get. But thank you guys for tuning in to episode 80. It's crazy that it's already episode 80 of the Paisan Sports podcast presented by Elevation 5280 Sports. By the way, bringing that sponsorship back up. Speaking of fantasy football, I ended up winning 2 of my fantasy football leagues. Both leagues, I made it to the championship. Dante came away with 0 championships this year. So for all that clowning that he did in
You
my
won
fantasy,
you won one game in Elevation 5280 Sports League. That's
I
all
think
that
I
matters.
ended up winning
This is
3.
the
So
league. When we're talking on this podcast, this is the league that counts. And you did horrible in it.
no, I think I hold myself to a higher standard, and we'll come back next year and we'll be ready to go. But thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully, when we're back at the beginning of next week, we'll be celebrating an Eagles playoff victory and looking forward to who they'll be playing in the divisional round of the playoffs. If the Bucks win, it will be the Bucks. If not, then I'm pretty sure it would be what? It would be they're the 2 seeds,
I
so
think
it
our I
would
think
be
our two possible opponents are the Bucks or maybe the Vikings. I know Washington is not on the table, unfortunately. I really want to
yeah,
play
because 'cause they're
them,
the lowest seed,
but
so,
yeah.
but yeah, we'll be looking forward to who the opponent is, and we'll be giving a preview of the matchup, and maybe we'll have some Phillies news, and they'll give us something to, look forward to, but we haven't had any so far, so, we'll be back at the beginning of next week, and thank you guys for tuning in.